Welcome back. New this morning, the U.S. is sharpening its squeeze on the Iranian economy, imposing sweeping sanctions on a major Chinese oil refinery and dozens of other ships directly tied to Iran's shadow fleet of aging tankers. One of China's largest independent petrochemical refineries reportedly received Iranian cargoes of oil from sanctioned vessels since 2023. It comes as new U.S. data shows China stored more crude oil than any other country prior to the Iran conflict, stockpiling nearly 1.5 billion barrels. Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. And Gordon, it's great to see you this morning. I want to get your take on what the U.S. is doing specifically to squeeze the Iran economy. They're going from the military warfare to economic warfare. You've got all of those things that they're doing in terms of sanctions on the Chinese vessels, but then they are also freezing $344 million in crypto tied to Iran and warning countries like China, if you do business with Iran, you won't have access to the U.S. financial system. Your reaction?
This is great, and it's important for the United States to start imposing secondary sanctions, and you should start, as the Treasury has done, with China, because China is the main criminal here. The important point, though, is that we have seen in the past that when we impose sanctions on Chinese entities, the Chinese center, the Communist Party, it just changes this, it moves the sanctioned activity to non-sanctioned entities and starts all over again. This is sanctions whack-a-mole, and they did it with regard to our sanctions on China's support for Ukraine. So the important thing here is for the United States to sanction all refiners, for instance, all vessels. We do that, we really cut off the China support for Iran. And this is, of course, in anticipation of President Trump's meeting with Xi Jinping in the middle of May. It's important that the United States make it clear to Xi Jinping that we will go further with sanctions if they end up moving sanctioned activity to other entities.
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. is cutting China's legs off, really, but it's still fighting back. It's escalating its trade feud now with Europe, banning exports of dual-use items to 7 European entities over their involvement or potential involvement in weapon sales to Taiwan. They include German defense electronics company Hensoldt, Belgian arms manufacturer F.N. Browning, both now considering diversifying their supply chains away from China. Gordon, good move.
Yes, good move. You know, dual use covers a lot of items, though I think that the sanctioned European entities will be able to get what they want through other channels. But the one thing here is that Brussels right now is reassessing its trade relations with China. This isn't going to help Beijing because this has got to be an increasingly nasty spat between Europe and China. And China can't afford really to do that when it's in a trade dispute with the United States and with others.
Yeah, great point. Meanwhile, we reported on this Michael Kratsios memo on Friday during our AI week, but the Trump administration is vowing to crack down on China's exploitation of U.S. AI models. A new memo from the chief science and technology advisor, Michael Kratsios, says the U.S., quote, has evidence that foreign entities, primarily China, are running industrial-scale distillation campaigns to steal American AI. This memo says this: these coordinated campaigns systematically extract capabilities from American AI models, exploiting American expertise and innovation. Now, Gordon, this morning, the new information here is that China is calling on Meta to withdraw its $2 billion acquisition of Singapore AI startup Manus. Your thoughts on this? And no secret that China is stealing our intellectual property. And now it's even going after our AI models.
Yes, this thing about Manus is really important because in March, Meta said that this deal complied with Chinese law. Well, there's no such thing as Chinese law. And what we are seeing is that Xi Jinping is trying to stop the leak of Chinese technology to the rest of the world, which means we should be stopping our technology going to China. So if they're going to try to unwind the Manus deal, and it's going to be very hard as a practical matter because as a practical matter, it's already been completed. But what we should be doing is unwinding China's recent acquisitions of our tech companies, because this is a struggle. And if we don't do that, then we're going to see China engage in even more brazen activities.
Well, it's a great point that you make because corporate America, I'm not sure if they've actually gotten the memo on all of this. You know, Gordon, I mean, you still have all these American companies knee-deep in China sharing secrets. I mean, the New York Times this weekend had a good piece, actually, raising questions about outgoing Apple CEO Tim Cook's legacy. Not in America, but in China. Here's what the Times wrote. Mr. Cook will be remembered for helping to bring capitalism and liberalism to one of the most populous countries in the world. He will be the man who not only squandered his company's future, as it is still highly dependent on China, but also handed the West's technological prowess to its biggest threat, its biggest adversary, Gordon.
Yeah, I'm no Apple fan, and I'm certainly no fan of Tim Cook. But you conducted an important interview in August 2021 with Jamie Dimon. And Dimon told you that they will comply, JP Morgan will comply with American law. But he also said, look, we as a business do not determine American foreign policy, and we certainly don't implement it. And as much as I don't like what Tim Cook did, the same applies to Apple. So the problem here is not Tim Cook. The problem is the American political establishment that allowed all of this to happen, because it was clear while it was happening that this was not in the interests of the United States, and this would cause a grievous harm to our country. So it's up to our political leaders to stop this, not Tim Cook.
It's a great point. It's a good point, because Mike Lee and Mehek Cook jump in here. Corporate America is going to do as much as they can do with a population of 1.4 billion people. Policy matters on this front, and you don't want to hand over America's prowess to the #1 adversary. That's why the issue of what chips we need to send comes up, Mike. Isn't that right? Are we sending our most important chips to China? We shouldn't be.
No, and like, it's particularly troubling, as much as I'm a fan of NVIDIA, but Jensen Huang, the way that he talks about the China and the Chinese Communist Party with reverence, and that his best friends over at SMCI were selling, we're backdooring chips of the latest and greatest NVIDIA GPUs into China. This is a real problem. There is no... the only politics the boardrooms in America see, for the most part, are the politics of money, and they'll sell out anybody, anywhere, anytime to get an extra couple pennies on the quarterly earnings.
Yeah, and you know, there is a debate underway among the Silicon Valley leadership, Mehek, where many companies are saying, no, don't send any chips to China. Others are saying, well, we're going to send the ones that are inferior to ones that the U.S. But this is a real hot conversation right now in Silicon Valley. What to send to China and what not to send to China.
Maria, and the answer should be, we should be sending nothing to China. I mean, look at your questions to Gordon. We're talking about Iranian oil. We're talking about our economy. We're talking about now AI and theft. I mean, how much more does the United States have to take before we realize that this wasn't just a war on Iran? This is a war on China on every front, from the spy balloon that Gordon's talked about with you all the way to where we are today. At some point, we just have to say enough is enough. Sanctions aren't even enough, Maria. Send them nothing. Cut off every single piece of trade we have.
All right. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, we have supply chains in China, and I think President Trump is aware he's got to walk a balance here until we're no longer dependent on some of this stuff out of China. Gordon, always a pleasure. Good to see you this morning, sir. Thank you. A wealth of knowledge on that. We'll be right back. Stay with us.